background to why we used audio files within teaching and learning was twofold really, related to the assignment briefs that we provided for students to complete their assessed work, but also in relation to tutorials that were building up to the completion of those assessments. We found that students quite often within the assignment brief only had a paper version to look at. We would obviously do the assignment brief within a classroom environment, but some students wouldn't interact with that, they wouldn't speak up because they were in a large group, or they wouldn't be able to take on board exactly what you were saying at the time, and there was no way of them revisiting that unless you repeated that session. Equally, some students may have been missing and would have missed out on that. From the tutorial point of view, once they've had their work and they've got a plan, meeting with them was very much a case of you spent part of your time typing up or writing the comments or the things that you discussed within your tutorial. So I think that the interaction with the student was minimised, or it took a lot longer, and with the number of students we've got it was very difficult to get them in and give them the quality time that they needed. So it was a case of saving a bit of time, hopefully, but also making it a more effective experience that the student can use within their own learning and ability to put forward their assessments. The intended outcomes initially were to try and help the student, no matter what background they came from or what needs they had. In some respects, we have a lot of students in nursing that do have learning difficulties, so we look at those, and the audio feedback was aimed to enhance the information that they had, and they had more than one way of actually accessing the information to help them complete assignments or reflect back on the content discussed within a tutorial. The other thing was that if people were missing or couldn't attend an assignment brief, we could post them on the virtual learning environment and other students would have access to the assignment brief, or we would email the tutorial feedback to the student after so they could replay it whenever and as many times as they wanted to. The challenges of using audio feedback, there's several of them. I think one thing we have to consider is, does the student actually want it? Not all students were keen to use it. Some didn't have the equipment to be able to play the files back, but in the main, most students did have, and they could be easily played through MP3 files or hardware that supports MP3 file playback. Another challenge was actually looking at other staff and whether they would want to use it, and although I at first thought that would be quite a large challenge, it turned out to be easier than I expected. A lot of staff adopted the process and have started doing that for themselves. The main advantages of using audio feedback, and this applies to both, whether I'm using it as an adjunct to the assignment brief in hard form, in written form, or for the tutorials, the main benefits of it really are that the students can listen to it anytime they want to. You can get much more information on an audio file than what you can in a typed sheet or a handwritten sheet. You've got intonation, so you can get across your feelings or express or put a firmer sort of feel on a particular aspect of a point in relation to the assignment brief or to the student in relation to their feedback. But also I think it helps students who've got learning difficulties and find it difficult to interpret things off paper. They can actually listen to it and it sinks in much more for them and is much more effective for them. I'd say the key points for effective practice are to give the student the option, try and tailor what feedback they need to meet their needs, what works best for them. I think that's the first and foremost. I think it's good to share practice with other colleagues and identify the benefits and the risks that using audio files has. I know other literature or research that's been conducted throughout the UK through various projects has highlighted that staff and students do like audio feedback, but I think it's important to bear in mind the students may not always want to use it, and I have had some students who didn't want to use it, and then you adopt a different approach. The audio feedback within nursing, if I was to look at how effective it's been, I would say it's been very effective. Again, we haven't used it for summative feedback at the moment, but that's the next step, and I know a lot of the literature has looked at it, a lot of other projects have looked at that. I would say it's been effective from the point of view that students really like it, to the point that students have come up to me before starting a module that I've been running and asking for tutorials to be documented by an audio file. And I've also had students who've come onto a new programme that haven't been here before, but talking to their colleagues have actually said, can you make sure we've got the audio file for the assignment brief, because a colleague of mine told me they wouldn't have passed the assessment without it, which you can argue there's another side to that, but it's obviously helped them that in cases where they may have otherwise struggled. But I think in summary, it's students like it, it's easy to do, other staff have adopted it and try it. I think if you're looking to adopt this sort of practice, and what I'd recommend anyone else thinking of doing that, whether that's within the institution or within other institutions, is to think about why you want to do it first. Think about who amongst your colleagues will adopt it, get a team together, discuss the approach you're going to use, including things like what technology you're going to use, whether it's going to be something that's open source through the internet, that's free to use like Audacity, or whether you're going to use dictaphones or something like that, or even PDAs that have the facility to record and send the file straight off as an email. Also think about how you're going to save a copy of that file. I think that's important. Just as in any type sheet, it's important for you to keep a copy of that audio file so you can listen back to it and you know exactly what you've said to the student. Okay, in relation to other projects that I've sort of looked at that have been useful for me in my project, was a project called Sounds Good, based up towards Leeds with Bob Rotherham. I went to a conference as well in 2009 that he spoke at, and there were various other presentations on that. And I'm aware of other projects such as the ACID project and the AFL project that have looked at feedback through the use of audio files or audio-visual technology in a variety of ways. And a lot of that information backs up my own experiences, that it's a very positive way of getting information across and enhancing the teaching and learning experience of students.